Welcome in. It is Sports by the Book Football Frenzy, the first one of this 2024 calendar year. I'm Jeff Parles. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to be here for a lot of reasons. But I think the biggest reason is look at who's on the desk with me right now. Hall of Famer, 140 plus years of experience in Nevada alone for these three gentlemen. Jimmy Vacarro is to my left. Chris Andrews is in Stanford for Andrew Luck today. And
for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. I know you love Andrew Luck more.
Yeah, he's my favorite player, but I was very briefly. Stanford saved my life, saved my wife's life. Love Stanford. I'm not sure I love them that much this week, but I love Stanford.
That could change.
Today, the football game notwithstanding, Chris. And on the far end, the dashing Vinny Magliulo on the far end.
Hey, wait a minute. What is dashing?
I stole Jimmy's Taylor. I'm just glad you didn't say Molari and Curly in that introduction.
Come on. That's
although we do love those guys.
That's Parles, McCormick, and Nicotero now. Come on now, guys. But we'll be with you every Friday. Today will just be an hour, just college football to talk about. Next week, we begin our 2-hour extravaganzas, an hour of college football and an hour of the NFL starting next week with, of course, week 1 in the National Football League. Guys, it's the exciting time.
Let's go.
The crowd's already starting to file in, people bedding for tonight's games and getting ready for tomorrow.
Good start yesterday. Yeah. Good slate yesterday, Chrissy. Yeah.
Great crowd. Won a few dollars. We didn't kill them, but we won a few dollars. Colorado game was good for a variety of reasons. We won the game, number one, but secondly, brought in a ton of people, a lot of business on that game. So it was a lot of fun.
Oh, and Coach Prime brings the bodies into the sports book. I was happy to get North Dakota State home yesterday. That's all I'll say. And Jimmy, of course, the start of another football season continues to grow and grow.
Yeah, obviously, what we're going to try to do with Chris's blessing here, I'm sure he'll be okay with it. On the weekends, I'll jump in for maybe 15, 20 minutes or maybe even longer because there's so much to talk about from this crazy racket that we've been in. And I think a lot of people would enjoy some of the things that we'll throw at them because, I mean, even me and Chris and Vinny, just like we get startled for what it was when we were kids, we started bet on the football to where it is now. And you know what? There's just so many little things you can see that's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. The first thing is that I'm looking at my two colleagues here is simply we're booking big-time football games. It's August. Mm-hmm. It's not even September anymore. Yeah. I mean, there used to be a time, and you guys can jump in, where, it was a November 1st, we might get a couple big games in there, but that's where, and we've benefited from it immensely.
Well, you think about it, Jimmy, when we were breaking into the business, the NFL was about 5 times what the college handle was, and I think a lot's got to do with, obviously, the fact that we're taking so many more every game. Like, look at yesterday, right? I mean, we did a couple of dozen extra games yesterday on the added schedule. And then, of course, the expanded playoff is added to it. And we know that those playoff games get bet like NFL games now, which is why, the handle on college is rivaling the NFL now.
Well, I tell these kids, almost everybody, including like you, Mr. Parles. I mean, you guys don't realize when we were growing up, we got one game on Saturday. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. Now I'm looking and I say, wait a second. You mean the North Texas, South Alabama game isn't going to be on TV? I mean, I think there's only 5 games. It's not, and we still might find them on the satellite. Mm-hmm. But there's like 5 games that aren't on TV, and it's a whole different world than what we grew up in. Jimmy will tell you the story. They almost rieted the one year when
one of my favorite stories.
The Nebraska-Oklahoma game on, So
I can still feel the pain. Yeah. And here we are. I mean, we have an LSU and USC game, and it's not September.
Right.
Think about the strength of those two programs.
In town, which is even greater. Yeah.
You remember, and you guys helped me out here. I mean, it was a battle to get some of these teams released so they could play in Las Vegas. They didn't even like us.
We couldn't advertise on TV.
Yeah, they wouldn't. They wouldn't even do anything.
By the way, quick lesson that people of today don't understand. One of the biggest events in the history of civil rights is when USC went into Alabama. I want to say it was 1967. It might have been 66. Sam Bam Cunningham
Mm-hmm.
and their quarterback, they had a black guy playing quarterback too, which was kind of rare at that time. Went into Alabama, kicked their ass.
Yeah.
And after the game, Bear Bryant went to the people. He says, "Listen, if you aren't letting me recruit black players, we can't compete for a national championship." Well, it did open it up because you couldn't just say, "Well, if you play football, we can let you in." Well, no, you had to let black people in, and it spread throughout the South. And here we have integration today.
And remember, again, just if these crowds didn't get bigger and bigger, we wouldn't have these events because obviously at that moment, it's like, well, what do you mean? We showed you we had 12,000 people there for the game. No, those type of games, and the Oklahoma-Nebraska game, like I said, I took a lot of liver shots on that one, buddy. Believe me, but it was an absolute rank sellout. So they finally got a little bit brains by saying, hey, we're missing out on a great event. And what they found out more importantly is like, now you use things that like, you would just say marketing things that they would play off of those big events and big games. Then all of a sudden, if you wanted to go to right now, if you wanted to go to the LSU USC game, if you wanted tickets, you should have got them 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Because there ain't no sense getting them now.
Or you're going to pay the scalper right now, or I heard they're selling standing room only tickets.
Yeah.
Which
probably going to set a record for the stadium. I think the old record is what did Michael say? Garth Brooks, and then BYU and Notre Dame a couple of years ago was 67,000. This game was going to surpass it.
Yeah.
So
let's get to this week's game.
Yeah,
we got a lot of stuff to talk about.
I do want to bring up two quick things beforehand, Chris. One of them is, of course, you've had futures markets up, whether it be national championship, the conference season win totals, to win the conference, all those markets out there. What are the ones that are getting bet the most right now?
Well, Colorado.
Oh, good.
I think they got a chance to win about 6 games this year, something like
Maybe.
that. Yeah. But the big one is Utah.
How about that?
And I'll tell you what, they're pretty good. They got their quarterback, who I think was questionable every single week last week for 12 weeks in a row. Yeah. What do you have, like 5 touchdowns, I think, before halftime, something like that?
49-0 last night when they really took the foot off the gas in the second half.
Yeah, and, I think they're very legit. They got a chance to win the Big 12, and if they do, they get a bye that first week. So, they're live. Listen, I think they've always produced. They got great coaching there, got some pretty good athletes. So I think they're definitely live. Those are probably the two that I'd say I'm sweating a little bit right now. I mean, actually, the Utah one's pretty bad.
What about the Ohio State and Georgia versus the field prop?
I love that prop. Bear, I think he mentioned it the other day on his podcast. We were just chit-chatting. He said it was in the car. I thought it was at dinner. But either way, he mentioned it. And I said, boy, you know what? That's a hell of a prop. We have done 2 tons of business on that one, both ways. Bear was the first one to bet it. He bet the 2 teams. Then it was a flood the other way. And now we're back to the 2 teams being the favorite. I think I take it back. I think we went to pick them this morning.
Right? Yeah.
But with a lot of 2-way action on this one, so that's going to be an interesting.
It's a great prop.
It's a great.
Really
prop.
is a great prop.
Let me throw this out there to my 3 friends again.
Sure.
How much before prime time starts to get the noose coming a little harder around his neck? It's coming quicker than I think. Yeah. Going back to last year, he won the national championship. If you listen to some of the people,
after 3 weeks,
after 3 weeks,
or 1 week,
and then the rest of the season happened.
He had all the stars on the sidelines; they couldn't get enough, and then the reality set in.
I think what Chris said earlier is right. That 6 is their ceiling. I think last night kind of proved that even as great as Shedeur and Travis Hunter are, the 2 of them, Shedeur is a top 5 quarterback in the country, and Travis Hunter may be the best player in the country.
They
altogether.
might be the 2 best players in the country. I think they're 2 of the top 10. I can tell you that.
The rest of that team, not up for the moment.
Yeah, not that good.
Well, we used 3 for the conference wins.
Yeah.
So
I thought that number was right.
No, they bet it over to 3.5, but now they're starting to bet the under.
Yeah, so it's not overly surprising. Real quick on one other thing. Of course, you guys put up games of the year earlier in the summer. What happens now that the games have begun? What do you do with those?
I'll tell you the truth. We have a small crew. So once they kick off that first game, we take them down. So Colorado's down right now. Who else is down? Georgia Tech.
Kansas is down. Missouri is down.
Everybody who's played a game, they go down. I just can't keep track of all the injuries, and so once they play that first game, they go down. So you still got you got a couple days, I guess, to play.
You got till that. I don't think Boston College made the list, so you got till whenever LSU and USC is involved on Sunday in order to get those last ones on the board.
And one thing before I leave my gentlemen to do the rest of these games, when you look over there and you see the parlay cards, it's a little light to your heart. Only because the guy that started all this was a guy named Michael Gaughan.
Yeah, he's sitting in our office right now.
We're 100 to 1 on the 10 teamers.
Yeah.
Michael immediately went to 300 to 1. Now you have parlay cards everywhere, and we're still the leader. Believe me with that.
What do we pay on that half-point card?
Half-point card for 10 to 10 is $750 to 1.
It's pretty good. That's pretty good. Lot different from 100 to 1. Chad.
Easy money.
So again, I have the 4 cards in my hand right now.
Yeah.
We determined that the ties win one is salmon. That's the color we determined. That's what Alex said it was. So
you know what? I think that's what the printer calls the paper. Yeah.
So the salmon one is the ties win. The white one is the ties win super teaser. The yellow one is the ties win teaser. And then you mentioned half card. The orange one is the half card one. $750 to 1 on the 10 for 10. Be a nice day at the office if you hit that, right?
We've had them hit over the years. Yeah, we have. Yeah.
Oh, look, it's great to have football back.
Yeah,
guys,
it is
for sure. And before we get into the games fully, Jimmy, I know you like this one. I have to bring it up before you step out. The first team to score a touchdown in the 9 a.m. Pacific slate of games, and then which college football team will score the most points on Saturday, August 31st. Vinny, over under 6.5 people tomorrow. Not fully grasping the first touchdown of the 9 a.m. slot.
The time of game, not the time of day. Please, public service announcement number 1. It is the time of the score within that game. Okay, or all of those games. So the earliest one by virtue of the time clock there. And another public service announcement, especially for this time of year. Please check your house rules. Know that the games must go a minimum of 55 minutes.
I had one last night.
You have a situation this time of year, lightning, games are shortened, especially non-conference games that are being played right now. Be aware of those not only house rules, but any stipulations. But 6.5, the over is pretty good bet.
Arkansas Pine Bluff, one of those extra games. Well, 10-minute quarters in the second half, Chris.
We paid it anyway.
Oh, okay.
Nobody had the dog.
No.
If you did, come see me.
I was gonna say that I watched a little of that game last night. Pine Bluff's one of the most overmatched teams I think I've ever seen in those FBS.
Because I didn't think that much of Arkansas.
Neither do I. So, all right. We'll take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get into the games for tonight, and we'll get into the whole slate of games, including Chris Andrews has a few games he likes.
I got a couple games.
He's got a few games he likes, so be on the lookout for that when we get back here on Sports by the Book Football Frenzy.
Have you always wanted to enter the biggest and best football contest in Las Vegas, but didn't know where to start and who to trust? Look no further than footballcontest.com to get the info you need to succeed, including breakdowns of the most popular and highest-paying football contests in the world, such as the Westgate Super Contest, Circa Sports Million, and Circa Survivor. Plus, find out how you can reserve the most trusted proxy in the business right now at footballcontest.com, as Maddie and Tony have been leading the way for over a decade with more than $10 million in winners during that time frame. All you need to do is find a way to get to Vegas sometime this summer and sign up for these football contests in person. Then let Maddie and Tony do the rest. They will submit your picks for you and help you focus on doing what you do best, picking winners. Don't miss out on the action this upcoming football season. Experience matters. So go with the pros at footballcontest.com. That's footballcontest.com.
South Point offers all the types of entertainment you'd expect at a first-class Las Vegas resort. Did you know our 400-seat showroom is one of Las Vegas's top destinations for live entertainment? Enjoy live performances by classic Vegas entertainers, bands, and today's hottest comedians, plus a rockin' dance floor. You can also enjoy live entertainment at the Grand View Lounge, where you'll feel all the vibes of old Las Vegas. Enjoy the music, and if you love to laugh, don't miss The Dirty at 12:30, our very own free comedy show. Every Friday night at 12:30 a.m. in the Grandview Lounge. The Dirty is 100% free, so arrive early. Go to southpointcasino.com or call the box office at 77136 for today's performances at the showroom and the Grandview Lounge. When you're ready for your favorite cocktail, stop in and unwind at one of our 7 specialty lounges. There's a bar around every corner, because you're in Vegas, baby. South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes, malts, sodas, and sundaes. At Kate's, there's something for everyone. And if you've still got time to spare, our bowling center might be right up your alley. Voted Best of Las Vegas, it's a great place for friends and family fun. 64 lanes, a pro shop, snack bar, and arcade. And while the kids are bowling, you can play slots and sip on a drink in the Alley Cat Lounge while overlooking the lanes. For our more serious and professional bowlers, the South Point is also home to a separate tournament bowling plaza.
Welcome back in. Sports by the Book Football Frenzy. Coming your way every Friday, all football season long, starting at 2 o'clock Pacific time. It was great to have Jimmy in studio. We also, Mr. Gaughan also popped his head in as well, during the commercial break.
He wanted to make sure we were actually doing our job in the studio and not hanging out by the pool.
Well, or the spa, right? Right, Vinny? But
The spa is much more likely.
yeah. Well, I know that's
A couple times a week.
You're there a few times a week using the treadmill.
I like the treadmill.
Yeah,
And
that's,
I soak my coconut a couple times too, as Jimmy says.
That's great. Chris Andrews, Vinny Magliulo here. I'm Jeff Parles. We're thrilled that you're with us on the Sports by the Book YouTube page as well. Make sure you have already hit that subscribe button, because these Sports by the Book shows starting next Tuesday exclusively right here on the Sports by the Book channel. All right, guys, we have a quartet of FBS versus FBS games here tonight. Man, one game is single digits. The rest are ranging from 13.5 on Michigan State all the way to 42 on Oklahoma against Temple.
Yeah, and that's barely single digits too,
Yeah.
by the way. So.
Mm-hmm.
But 42, by the way, is not the total.
No, that's what Oklahoma's
That's the
laying
side.
tonight. I really don't have any opinions on these 4 games tonight. The biggest thing I'm going to be looking for is Oklahoma, where first, I know that Temple is arguably one of the 5 worst teams in FBS this year, but you're going into the SEC. You have an unproven quarterback in Jackson Arnold making his second career start. He started the Alamo Bowl last year against Arizona. I just want to see where this Oklahoma team is at more so than anything against one of the FBS's worst in Temple.
I like Oklahoma. That's one of my games I picked tonight. I thought this number should have been closer to 50. I mean, 50 is hard because there's only 60 minutes in the game. But I still think I like Oklahoma in this spot. Not too often I lay any double digits. But, college, you can get away with playing some deep, deep chalk. And this is about as chalky as it gets. About as chalky as you ever see me play it. But I like Oklahoma minus the 42.
It's the only thing you brought up about the transition, Jeff, to the SEC. Obviously, this is not an SEC opponent, but certainly, want to work on things. Some injuries to their wide receiver core, which I guess will give Venables an opportunity to kind of look at the depth and what's happening with the club. But they're ready to play. That's the other thing, right? The teams have been working out for a while. The different, you compare the NFL you look at preseason. Why do they have preseason? That's a big question that's coming up anymore. This is a game where these teams go right into the season, and maybe this is a warm up, sure, but still got to get it done. But I think it went up as high as 42.5, Chris.
Yeah,
but seven.
Yeah. We've had some play both
six
ways.
Touchdowns. Is it's probably if you can get more than that, but like Chrissy said, this is a matter of class right here.
Yeah, the Temple. Chris Felica on the show earlier this week took under 2.5 for the season wins. Roster's not good there in Philadelphia for the Owls.
Here's a big indicator.
Yeah.
When your offense has to practice tackling,
that's not good.
That's not good.
That's not. That is
Red
a
flag.
factual statement, Chris Andrews. The other games tonight. Look, I'll just ask you real quick because you're bearing the logo on your shirt. TCU and Stanford. It's 9. It bounced all over the place. Got as high as 10, as low as 8. Total was 61.5. Now it's 60. Stanford, I think, is in for another rough year, like they were a year ago.
Yeah.
And TCU is really in the middle in the Big 12 more so than anything.
I kind of favor the dog here. It's not one of my plays, but I kind of favor the dog. I think Alex mentioned it on your show earlier today. Stanford's going to try to run the ball, and can they? I don't know, but they're going to try to do that, and that's going to milk a lot of clock. And Stanford, really one of the smallest home field advantages of any school in FBS. As a matter of fact, I have them as a 0. But still, you are at home. You know, I think they
flight from Fort Worth to the Bay Area.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could hold this to. I mean, if you saw 10, I would say it's a take.
I would agree on that. Alex liked the under in this game at 60.
She might have a point.
That was what you liked the most.
You brought up a key point, Jeff, about travel. Travel, not so much this year, maybe, but or this time of year. But the travel is going to have to be there's going to be a big adjustment by a lot of schools. Okay, in terms of distance and weather is going to become a factor in some cases as well. So. That's a key point.
Ironically enough, Stanford and Cal travel more than some NFL teams this year.
There you go.
So there you go with the new move to the ACC because nothing says the Atlantic Coast like Palo Alto and Berkeley, California. Moving along to tomorrow, guys. Let's go Florida International and Indiana. This is a new era in Bloomington. Cignetti comes over from James Madison, brings basically the best of the Sun Belt to Bloomington in the transfer portal. This has actually been bet to Indiana here from 19 to 22, Chris. So a nice solid 3-point move on this game.
Yeah, I mean, when I put out the numbers earlier this year and then talked to Bud Elliott, talked to Bear, talked to some other people, I think I kind of missed the boat on Indiana. I think they're very good, and I think this is going to be a big game for Indiana to kind of show that they plan on being – listen, we know they're not going to win the Big Ten this year, but can they make a bowl game? Absolutely. I think they want to kind of show a little bit that there's a new era in Indiana football. But warning, Jeff, warning, all these guys sound good on the way in. They don't always sound so great on the way out.
Well, if you don't win the press conference, that's what
it is. But Cignetti, I think, sounds very good on the way in, and I kind of think he might be the right guy for a program that has just been sleepwalking pretty much my whole life. But I think there are some possibilities there.
I think Chris had a key point. There were some adjustments that we had to make. The games of the year, right, are your first real attempt at putting numbers together, right, Jeff? So when we did that, very early power ratings, professionals bet them, and that's where you have to get a look at your own power ratings even before the season starts. Indiana was one. Arkansas is another one, Chris. When we get to them, we'll talk about them and the way they were played. And, of course, a pretty dominant performance last night. But, this is an example that Indiana, and they're getting played, and they're getting back for it.
Let's go to Maryland and Connecticut. I know, another great game, but this is another one that's moved almost a whole field goal. Mm-hmm. They're taking the Huskies from 22 on Maryland down to 19.5, 44.5. That total's also got hit 3.5 points to the under as well, Chris, from 48 to 44.5.
I think it's getting a little cheap. I made this number higher. My handicap number came to 24. I opened at 22. I don't know, a lot of money on the dog, and boy, Connecticut's been disappointing backers for since Edsel's been gone. That's been a while. So I don't know. I'd be very careful here. I certainly do not like the dog in this spot.
Yeah, I'm in agreement now that we're sub 20 at this point. UConn, Jim Mora Jr., that first year obviously was magical. Getting 500.
Yeah, it was.
Reality struck pretty quickly.
That first year was very good, no doubt.
Let's go to something a little bit better than this, if you guys are okay with that.
Please.
That's a game that Clemson was still Clemson of a few years ago. We'd be talking about this like a potential, maybe even a national championship preview in the city that the national championship game will be held in Atlanta. Georgia will take on Clemson. Chris, This one, you guys have been a little bit higher than some of the market has been, at least today. 14 opened. Now we're down to 12.5.
Yeah.
You guys never went lower than that. Some of the market did go to 11.5 earlier in the day.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine that was a nice calculated idea to keep this thing at 12.5.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, I don't, and we're going to give out some sides this year just because, we're on the show. But I mean, I do have my opinions and I do my homework. And I just think Georgia is much better than Clemson. This is not going to be one of the games I'm going to give out because Clemson, they may have surprised us. I mean, listen, Dabo Swinney, he has won a national championship. He's won a couple of them. He's a pretty good coach. I think Dabo's fallen asleep with the NIL and, the portal and all that other
transfer
stuff.
Portal guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia's roster is just loaded, even though they replaced a lot of guys that went to the pros and theoretically doing well so far in the NFL. But I think that Georgia is the right side here. I made it higher. And listen, they're going to bet me, I'll move it. But until they bet me, I'm not moving just on air. If they want to come in and take a position on Clemson, God bless. There's a counter right over there.
Georgia with some off-season issues, right? Players involved with some altercations, and there's rumors of possible suspensions. Etienne is rumored to he's questionable, right? I think he's hurt. But to Chris's point, who's had the better recruiting? Not only this past year, but in recent years, and I think it's a matter of depth here, and I think it's only a matter of time before we do see some Georgia money.
For what it's worth, I laid the 11.5 when I saw it earlier today. Another shot. I know we're not supposed to basically look at how conferences look this early in the season. What does the ACC in these first few days look like? Florida State loses as a double-digit favorite to Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
SMU needs a last-minute touchdown to lose to beat Nevada as a 4-touchdown favorite. NC State was losing going to the fourth quarter to an FCS team last night. North Carolina was fortunate to beat Minnesota.
Did they lose their quarterback?
Who?
North Carolina did.
Yeah, Max Johnson's out for the year with a broken leg, so they're on their backup quarterback now.
That was a close battle though in the summer. I mean,
I was not overly impressed. I mean, it's going to be on Hampton, the running back now, to really pick things up. But I thought the ACC was going to be average going in. Nothing I've seen so far makes me think different. And Georgia and Ohio State are a clear clip above everyone else. I laid the 11.5 when I saw it earlier. We have a question in the chat, guys. You want to hear from our listeners? Sure. Dean earlier asked us, what are your opinions on hedging a bet?
Here's my opinions on that. If you do it all the time and that's your business, we have friends who are they do a lot of that arbitraging. That's what they're doing. They're professionals, and that's the way they go about their business. Then do it. But if you have a real good number and you're a handicapper and a bettor, I'd say stick with that number. I mean, invariably, people have come to me about hedging. They want to hedge because I never tell them to hedge. But if they want to hedge, then they come in. Let's say you laid the 11.5 on Georgia. Now it goes to 14.5 tomorrow. Should I hedge? Should I hedge? Well, do you want to hedge? And if you want, okay, we'll take, whatever it is, half your bet, a third of your bet, whatever I want. And now Georgia goes and blows them out. You dirty rat, you told me to hedge that bet. I didn't tell you to do anything, so just be careful. If you got a great number, don't be afraid to sit on it.
Yeah, you've got to listen, you bet with confidence, right? I mean, but it also depends on what you're talking about. First of all, how much is your investment? And there's a difference too in hedging on a particular game, like Chris's example there with a 2-point, perhaps a 2-point middle, right? But the other thing is if you've got a 5-teamer and you've got 4 in, and now you depending on what number you got riding to the 5th, well, you're almost you can take the other side, especially if the other side has moved several points. If you got that 2-point move on a 5-teamer there, you got a chance to you guarantee yourself something. So it depends on what the hedge circumstance is dictating.
I hate to go a little bit with a cop out, but it all depends on how much does the money at stake mean
What's
for
your
you
investment?
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those. The only time I ever think of hedging would be a future. Getting a team deep
Again, that's a different story.
now in this 12-team college football playoff. I mean, there are shots down the board. Like I know you have a lot of liability on Utah, but I mean, there are big numbers on Utah. If Utah makes a college football semifinal, I'd probably look to go the other way and take a little bit on that, especially since my return is still going to be really good.
I would say this too: if you are hedging, try to get value both ways.
100%.
There you go. It's a good question.
That was Dean in the chat
Thanks,
asking
Dean.
that. Let's go to. I was about to say another Big East school, but that doesn't exist in football anymore. ACC Syracuse with a new coach, Fran Brown, takes over as the Orange at home are 18-point favorites against the Ohio Bobcats. It's kind of strange to see people going against Ohio, but this is not the same Ohio team that we are used to in the MAC. From 14 to 18, and that total's gone down 2.5 points.
And that's another one. I like Ohio. I think that opening number opened at 14. I thought that was a good opener. Now here you are. You've gone through 14. You've gone through 17. And I know there's not the same numbers as the pros, but still pretty significant numbers. I think this number's gotten way too high, and I think they're even laying the 18.
Yeah.
Jeff, you probably have it on your screen.
It's
higher than that, right?
Where are we right now? You guys are actually the market
I
high.
think we're to high.
Oh, we
You're
are
market
at the
high.
high.
You're
You've
the
always
market
been bet up
17
there.
and a half.
You're 18. The rest of the market is sitting at 17.5. Of course,
I might have to lower that once I get back in there.
Kyle McCord, of course, is the starting quarterback at Syracuse. We saw him last year at Ohio State. I think this is a little more his speed at Syracuse. But that's a pretty aggressive move going through 14 and 17 in his college game. You just don't see that very often.
Yeah, I think this number's gotten too high.
Let's go to a team we saw last week. How about Georgia Tech? Upsetting Florida State in Dublin, a sentence that the creators of college football wanted to hear over 100 years ago. Now they go home. They play Bobby Dodd here tomorrow afternoon. They're 21 points favorites against in-state foe Georgia State. So, Chris, I'll just ask you because, of course, we have a data point and a surprising one at that on Georgia Tech. How have the bettors done with this game? Have they really not moved much on this?
Not much. Two-way action. My numbers came to 20 even after last week's game. So I think the number's about right. Interesting in-state matchup. But, good two-way action. But, Jeff, you can ask me a whole bunch of games. We've had two-way action on almost every game. It's really been incredible. Great, which I love opinions. Of course, I want to go in needing one side or another. I'm just not sure which side it is in this game.
You look at this team, first of all, an advantage, right, having a game under their belt, but then pretty significant travel, to get back. And let's see how the coaches prepare this team for this week. Was last week an indictment against the ACC? Well, if you look at SMU and NC State last night, maybe. But also, let's figure, maybe Georgia Tech is just better than we thought, too. Let's give them some credit. I mean, the way they played that game and they prevailed in that game. So, Georgia Tech figures and we'll learn a little bit more about them here, bouncing back, right, making sure that game didn't go to their heads. The other part, Jeff, let's go back to the beginning of the show when you talked about futures and things like that. Florida State's not out of it because of the expanded format too, right? So that kind of adds to fans' interest, but also adds to us, Chrissy, about futures and booking futures because now you've still got teams that are alive in it. Now you still have to make adjustments and things like that. So there's a lot of things that kind of tie in here. We're talking about one game, but there's a ripple effect from our side of the counter to what these games mean in terms of our thought process.
The emotional high of last week makes me think that Georgia State first half might be the way to go. Maybe. But I will say one thing you did bring up. Maybe Georgia Tech is a little bit better than we thought. They're playing the trenches last week was shockingly good.
Dominated.
They dominated a team that does not get dominated in the trenches in conference play, historically speaking. All right, let's go to a game that Chris likes here. Let's go to James Madison and Charlotte.
Feature game of the day.
Yeah, 100%. Charlotte, real quick here. Charlotte's coach, Biff Poggi, had a very weird press conference earlier this week where he was claiming that half of the starters are dealing with injuries and The market actually came on Charlotte today.
Yeah.
So who knows how valid that press conference was, Chris?
Is he the one that did the cat and dog thing a couple years ago?
No,
Is
that
a
was
different
the
guy?
old
Okay.
Coastal Carolina coach.
Oh, okay.
Pokey's the guy. Was a financial guy who's worth worth a lot of money, and then coaches on the sidelines in gym shorts and a cutoff shirt. He's quite a character. James Madison's 8.5. Of course, totally new roster, totally new era there after Signetti leaves to go to Indiana.
Still think this number got awful cheap. You know, they do have some players on this team, and my opening number was 10.5. I think we got down to 8. I think there's
6
8
at one point.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
all the way
It's
down.
got down even further than that. So I think there's a lot of value in betting the favorite right here. My numbers came a lot higher. So this is one of my games that I'm giving out this week. I just think that, I'm looking at Charlotte, another team with 0 that I've given them for a home field advantage. By the way, I've tried to do some work over the last couple of years on home field advantage. So I don't want to just give a standard 3 or this team. Some teams I've had the lower, some teams I've had the raise. This team has no home field advantage whatsoever. So I think this number has gotten a little bit cheap.
You know, up the ladder now, the way we came down, right? And again, the thing about what Chris was talking about too, these games have been up for a month or longer. So, the good thing is, just like, that first week of the NFL, it has such a high handle because, they've been up for several months. It's a similar situation with this first. This is still the first week, not last week.
Yeah.
Well, it's all week 1. I know we like week 0, but this is the real show here this week. Speaking of the real show, let's go to Morgantown. Very intriguing game. West Virginia welcomes Penn State. These two teams played at State College last year. Penn State, that was the game where Franklin scored the touchdown late to cover the number. So it was actually a much more competitive game than the final score indicated, over 20 a year ago. Chris, it's been all about the Mountaineers. All about the Mountaineers all month long, and especially this week. 11 open, down to 8. There's even a lot of 7.5 in the market now in a game that's totaled at 50 here. Again, West Virginia returns 20 starters from last year's team.
Well, my two friends are you grew up in Long Island, you grew up in Brooklyn. I'm assuming you've never been to a game in West Virginia.
I have never been, but I know a lot of people who went to high school that went to that university.
Well, I can tell you this. I've been to basketball games there. I've been to football games there. And it's as intense a crowd as you ever see. And we probably have some Pittsburgh people listening. I want to say the year might have been about 1976 or so. And I think it was the chancellor of Pitt, Wesley Posvar. They got into a fight at midfield with West Virginia. Pretty sure, one of the big muckety mucks at Pitt got into a fight at midfield. And I was there for that. And I think it was Posvar. But, I mean, it is intense. And my numbers actually come a little bit higher. But this is one of those games where you have to look a little bit beyond just the numbers. This is going to be a very intense game, especially after what happened last year.
Yeah.
I like West Virginia in this game. And I'll tell you what, though. How about the 2 9:00 games we got tomorrow morning? Georgia, Clemson, West Virginia, Penn State.
Pretty good.
It should be a great morning. Get here early, folks, because this place will be filled. And to quote Ryan Brown, he'd come in sometimes, you need a shoehorn to get anybody else in this joint. And that's the way it'll be tomorrow.
That's right. Sort of like the Brooklyn College LIU game, Jeff. I'm sure
nothing like that.
But no, Chris, I remember when I first got into business, got into the gaming business here, and the guys, Chrissy and Jimmy and several friends from that area used to tell us how intense it was, and then you see it firsthand. I mean, you have to respect it, and the fact of the matter is, that's a difficult place to play. I mean, obviously, Happy Valley's got over 100,000 people, right, Chris? But this may as well.
Different.
This is a different type of home field. This is a home field advantage. There's no question about
100%,
that. That goes beyond some of the other schools that we've been talking about. So, but it's been one way. At some point, though, I think we'll see some Penn State money. We're never really at a loss for Penn State money during the course of the season.
Ticket count is on Penn State.
Yeah.
There
you go.
It's not ridiculous, but I think the sharper money is most clearly on the dog.
On the dog, yeah.
Moving along here. Let's look at Boise State and Georgia Southern. A very weird road trip here for Boise, going all the way to Statesboro for this one. But Chris, the bettors have not been disturbed by the fact that this is a long travel for Boise. They bet this from 10 to 13 through the summer.
Yeah, my numbers are 13.5 on this game, so I kind of agree with the move. But it's kind of a strange matchup here. But I guess with all the flux right now that's in college football, I guess we shouldn't look at anything too strangely. But, and I'm one of those, I think Boise's actually a little bit overrated, but I think they're in a good spot to beat a pretty weak team right now. Like I said, my numbers came to 13.5, so I agree with where the number is right now.
The trip is a bit of a challenge, I would say, that you guys point out too. Probably the humidity factor as well this time of year. This early, in the season, so certainly an adjustment. I would think that the staff. I'm not sure when they got there, but obviously folks seem comfortable with the Broncos side here, and as we get up to almost 2 touchdowns.
Boise State is my pick to be the non-power conference representative in the college football playoff. They're odds on behind us to win the Mountain West. I know that. I know you took a lot of action on that.
Yeah.
I don't see that as much of a surprise. I'm very curious to see with a first-time head coach who was the interim in Spencer Danielson a year ago. Very curious to just see how this looks. In a Mountain West that could be very strong, but Steve Cofield brought up to Alex and I on the show the other day, be a lot of beating up on each other, especially with Oregon State and Wazoo playing multiple games within the Mountain West.
We'll get to them a little bit later, but I think Fresno is a very viable team. I still have a lot of respect for that outfit, even though they have a new coach this year.
Tedford stepped away due to health concerns. Let's go to Kentucky and Southern Miss next. Kentucky's a 27-point favorite, Chris, but you were telling me before the show some respected money here on Southern Miss Golden Eagles in this one.
Yeah, my numbers were a little bit higher, but, sometimes you have to wonder. I'll tell you, the other thing and it didn't show up yesterday because I think there was a lot of mismatches in the writing games, but, a team like Southern Miss, a lot of times they could play extremely well early in the season when injuries haven't taken their toll yet. Obviously, an SEC team is going to be much deeper, but right now, the injury bug that every team goes through it. That's not just college football, but pro football too. But it hasn't hit a team like this yet. So I could see my numbers skew a little bit higher, but I could see where the money would show on the dog here.
Dog would get up to 26 to 28, and then it came back down, right, Chrissy, with the 4 touchdowns. Yep. And as Chris mentioned, some pretty good opinions took the 28.
Well, I got a line that's bigger for you here. Okay. How about Ohio State and Akron next? The Zips go to the shoe. Basically, everyone that I know, Ohio State and Georgia in some order is 1-2. Most people have Georgia ahead of Ohio State. That's part of the reason you put up that prop there, Chris. So it's right now it's 7 touchdowns with Ohio State. I actually bet Akron from 51 to 49.
There's only 60 minutes in the game, Jay.
Look, you're winning the game as soon before they even kick off.
Frank asked me off the air about this game yesterday. I was like, well, Ohio State could win 56-7, and you got Refundapalooza at 49, and 57 gets there on the over. Look, Ohio State is so good. But the one question mark, and this goes into the into this new 12-team playoff, how are these teams like Ohio State, like Oregon, like Georgia, who know, all right, well, we have a lot to play for this year. We have, if we make a college football national championship game, we're playing 16 games.
Sure.
When it's all said and done, do we just see like, all right, Will Howard and company are out there for a half. Ohio State's up 38-0 at halftime. Is that it for the starters? And I know Ohio State's backups are pretty damn good too, but I just wonder how many teams are going to be seeing. We're going to be seeing more backup outfits in second halves of these blowout potential games.
Jeff, that's part of the strategy betting wise. But I think this is kind of amusing in my tiny little pea brain. I have Akron, the third worst team in college football, and I'm looking at my notes here. I have Temple and Kent State half a point worse.
Oh, boy.
And I got Ohio State, my number 1 team. So I can't remember the last time we've had this big of a disparity in my powers. But like I said, they
So
only play
close.
60 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not Georgia Tech and Cumberland College where it was 222 to nothing. You know?
You're so close to number one in the bottom. That might be the closest you've gotten in a while in an FBS game. Let's go to a team we saw last week. We saw New Mexico last week. They blew a big lead, lose to South Dakota State at home. Now they go to Arizona. Expectations probably would have been a little bit higher for the Cats if Jed Fish had stuck around instead of taking the Washington job, but still a team that is, I know Vinny loves the pollsters.
Montana State, right?
Which?
New
Montana
Mexico.
State, excuse me.
Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
South Dakota State's playing Oklahoma State. Yes, Montana State with the big comeback
Yeah.
in that game. Arizona, though, 30.5 in this one, 59 the total right now for the Wildcats and Lobos.
I made this number exactly 30.
There we go.
So, I mean, I don't, and that was after the adjustment from last week. But so no strong opinion here. But I will say our good friend Paul Stone let it slip. He says, Arizona might not be as good as people think.
That's possible. New coach.
Yeah, transition.
Yeah.
For sure.
They were able to keep at least McMillan, who's the best receiver in the country, arguably. Well, maybe not after seeing Travis Hunter again last night. But,
jeez.
They're more intriguing going into the year because they have to play an extra Big 12 game that's not a conference game in that Kansas State game, which, by the way, remember, there are 2 Big 12 games this year that are Big 12 teams playing each other that are not conference games.
I
So
tried to spell that one out, too.
You had that.
By the way, Vinny put 6.5 on that time thing. don't put 6.5 here because it's going to be way over that.
Going to be 66.5 maybe. But Arizona, big favorite in that one against the Lobos of New Mexico. This one is actually intriguing for the other Arizona school who's in there in the Big 12 now, second year under Kenny Dillingham. They welcome Wyoming. Just a reminder for everyone, Craig Bull retired in the offseason, so it's now Jay Soyvel that takes over as the head coach for Wyoming. Chris, this is an intriguing game. It's only 7. I know a lot of people may say, oh, it's a new coach of Wyoming. It's not enough. The DNA of that program is still there that Craig Bull built out over the last decade plus.
I was surprised Bull retired. I thought he was making some decent strides, although it's what I've been on that Wyoming campus. That's tough to recruit up there. Jeez. But I made the number 6. So, no strong opinion for me here.
6. Here's a toggler for you, Jeff. 6.5 and 7. Taking the 7, and although we've been at 7, I think most of the day. Credit to what you opened it, and then they took it and went down to 6.5. I think there was even a sniff at 6, but so far overall 2-way. But I think they'll bet Arizona State for the most part in this game. As we get,
I like Wyoming. I'm just curious because this is one of the last games of the day tomorrow night. It's
this is in the Arizona game.
Yeah, this is a little late game.
Yeah.
I just am curious to see how the market takes this, especially because there is a Hawaii game, as we know, as they take on UCLA tomorrow, but that's an earlier kickoff than usual.
This will be one of the higher handled Wyoming games of the year because of its position, not only in just this week being what it is, but because of the time, as you mentioned, Jeff. It's a good point.
Let's go to Miami against Florida. Very interesting game, and quite frankly, for the Canes, a very important game right out of the gate to get some ghosts away for good, potentially, with Mario Cristobal and company. Cam Ward comes over from Wazoo, arguably the best quarterback transfer other than Dylan Gabriel in the country. Florida plays the Murderers Row schedule.
They do.
Billy Napier is on the hot seat. I don't know why I like Florida in this game, just because I do not trust the coach on the Miami side until I am proven otherwise. Chris
You don't like him running out the clock?
I don't like that.
I didn't give this as one of my sides, but I have this as a lean towards Florida. We've been talking about the ACC, and even our good friend Mr. Felica, who's a Miami grad, thought there's some question marks here on Miami. And a lot of guys are high on them. I think Chris talked about it himself that he wasn't that high. He has some serious question marks. Now, sometimes those question marks can be answered in a positive way too. But I think it's a big test, and I think Florida. I thought they should be a very slight favorite here, maybe like a 2-point favorite.
This game gets to 3, it'll be a take. So that's one that but it'll be a good a good two-way betting game. Nice position, nicely in the middle of the day.
Right in the middle of
12:30s.
Right in the middle of the day. Again, it's not that I love Florida long term because again, their schedule is one of the most ridiculous
it is tough.
SEC schedules I have ever seen. Where their win total at some shops that did the full season was 4.5. You never see that on the Gators.
What do we have it for?
I think Vinny double checked that, but you were. I think you'd be
3 or
I
so.
think you're 3, but their schedule is
it's brutal. They're going to win some of those close games.
Yeah, look, they'll probably find a way to beat Tennessee because they always
we used
beat Tennessee.
3.
We used 3
flat, and it hasn't been touched really both ways.
By the way, Florida in conference, Texas A&M at home, at Mississippi State, at Tennessee, Kentucky, at Georgia, at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss. Good luck.
I mean, I see Mississippi State.
That's a win.
Other than that,
and
we're scrambling.
They also, in their non-con games, other than Stanford next week, Miami, Central Florida, Florida State. Hello, playing all the games in the Sunshine State.
Yeah.
For Florida.
Boy, who's that? Miami, Central Florida,
and Florida State.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's brutal for the Gators this year. Let's go to a new SEC team. We talked about Oklahoma earlier. Let's go to Texas. Texas, 33.5-point favorites right now, but they this has been a ladder game from 36 down to 31.5. Now coming back up the ladder to 33.5 on the horns against Colorado State.
You're right.
Yep.
First move was all dog money.
Yeah.
And then we I guess we got low enough, and today it's been all favorite money. This is one, boy. These games are just hard to handicap.
Sure are.
Jeff, you're talking about keeping your foot on the pedal or not, and you just never know, especially with the new dynamics of the 12-team playoff, how this is all going to work. I'd steer clear of this game. I do think this number should be a lot higher under normal circumstances, and I'm not sure what the new normal is, Jeff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, ask me this time in 2025, I might give you an answer, but right now I'm not ready to give you one.
Look, you have a team here that is going to come out and going to be creative and particularly on offense in Colorado State, right? What do they have to lose? And we saw that last year. You'll probably see, I'm not going to say they're going to, just, go crazy, but, throw anything, but very unpredictable, right? Particularly offensively. In Texas, a lot of pressure on them too. But this is a game too. We're going to watch, and again, you're evaluating power ratings, and you're not going to over adjust and overreact, but certainly. This is a good first game for both of these schools, I think. Again,
Texas gets Michigan next week. So, again, I bring up the same question as the Ohio State game. If Texas is up 38-7 at halftime, how much of Quinn Ewers are we going to see in the second half? We might see Arch Manning in that second half for Texas. Who knows? That might not even be a drop-off. Might even be better for Texas. You never know. Not throwing that out there for no reason there, Chris. Let's go to Nebraska and UTEP real quick. Huskers are 27.5. Not much of an opinion on my end, but this is a year where the schedule does break nicely. If the Huskers are going to surprise people, win 9 games potentially with that sort of schedule.
I like them this year.
Yeah.
Made this number 31, so it wasn't really not a play for me. But I think this is hopefully finally in the right direction for Nebraska. They've been making a lot of attempts after firing Frank Solich, which nobody knows why that happened. But, we'll see. Of course, we have a few allegiances to Nebraska here at the South Point, so I'd like to see him turn it around.
It's all about the quarterback play.
Horrible quarterback play a year ago.
So
Raiola, the big freshman recruit, comes in starting right away. Look, at least body wise, he looks like Patrick Mahomes. We have to see what the play is.
I think Rule's doing a good job there, building a program. It's going to be a situation. Again, it's all going to depend on how the quarterback plays. Let's
go to Northwestern and Miami of Ohio. Wildcats 3.5-point favorites against Miami of Ohio. This game being played on the campus of Northwestern because Ryan Field's under renovation, so they're playing at the practice field. So that will be quite the display right on Lake Michigan. The main reason I bring this up is Miami of Ohio is considered to be the best team in the MAC, and Northwestern is again overachieved in a big way last year. I just wonder if regression to the mean comes for the Wildcats here in 2024.
They won a lot of close games last year, Northwestern. I kind of like Miami in this game. Again, Not much. I made the number 2. So I mean, but you get the 3.5. If you're forcing a play, I guess you'd play the dog here. But I'm not crazy about it. But I do think, we opened the number 3. I think that was okay. They bet us the favorite, and if I go in here needing a dog, I'm okay with that.
Low total as well, 39. That's market low actually right now from 43.
It's not quite Iowa, but it's
no. Well, don't worry, we'll get Iowa tomorrow in an extra game on that. Here's a game I know you like, Chris, featuring a team here in town. UNLV goes on the road to Houston. Willie Fritz, first game as head coach of the Houston Cougars. Barry Odom, year 2 for UNLV. You know what? This is a pretty big statement opportunity for the Rebels on the road as a 3-point underdog against the Power 4 team in the year after, again, the best season they've had in over 20 years.
No, I have a ton of respect for Fritz.
Oh, yeah.
But game 1? No.
Tough.
I'm just telling you, over the years, and I know things change constantly in our world, and particularly in the college football world, probably more than anything. But betting against new coaches is something that you've probably done very well at over the course of time. Now, does that mean for the whole year? Not necessarily, but sometimes yes. But game 1, a lot of times, yeah. And I think Barry Odom, sure, he's lost some players, no doubt about it. But I think this program is moving in the right direction. Like I said, Fritz, he'll probably do well at Houston in the next couple years, maybe even by the end of this year. And by the way, people that don't know me, I spent 30 years in Reno. I am not a UNLV fan.
I know
I'm
you
a
are.
Nevada fan. So this is one of the games. I have no lean towards UNLV as a homer, but I think this is the right side. I think they should have been a slight favorite in this game.
Game opened 3, got as low as 1. Now going back up. Houston, I think I have them power rated, towards the bottom of their conference. I think one of the best things that happened to UNLV was Barry Odom staying. I mean, with the Rebel success last year, there was a lot of speculation that he might have, got recruited to a bigger program or a more notable program in one of the Power 4 conferences and left. But the fact that he's still here, I think, is a good sign for UNLV. And I could see here where the 3 is a take.
I thought he was going to go to Arizona.
Yeah.
I really did. When that job opened late,
yeah,
thought that's what he was going to open for Odom. Look, a legitimate chance to make the college football playoff for UNLV, as wild as that may seem. But if you win the Mountain West, especially if you get this game, because they go to Kansas in 2 weeks, they're not winning that game. You gotta pick off these opportunities if you're going to get that non-Power 4 bid, and then obviously you have to finish the deal when the Mountain West championship game comes around. Here's another game I know you like, Chris. Virginia Tech goes to Nashville to take on Vanderbilt. Virginia Tech, there are a lot of people who were very high on the Hokies going into this year. After last year, really a slow start, great finish. Kyron Jones, the quarterback, dual threat. Really, for some people, I know a lot of people that have 100-1 on him to win the Heisman. Not saying he's going to win the Heisman, but hey, 100-1's 100-1. You guys are market high on this game at 14. The rest of the market's at 13.5.
Yeah, we did get bet up.
Yep.
So I mean, I was just going with the market, but one of our pretty big players came in. He bet me on the money line too. So bet me the money line and laid the points. Guy I respect, pretty good handicapper. So I mean, I definitely want to go in needing Virginia Tech if I could in this game. This is another one of those 9:00 games tomorrow. I kind of like them tomorrow. I think that Vandy. I mean, they're God bless them. They got great programs all throughout their school, except football. And baseball, one of the best. Usually a competitive basketball team, but football not so much. And I do like Virginia Tech this year. I think it's a very good team.
Not a strong home field.
No, well, barely a home field since that place is finally finished renovating. Diego Pavia, by the way, who would very successful at New Mexico State, comes over, is now the quarterback for Vanderbilt. But this might be a struggle for the Doors. It's going to be a long year for Vanderbilt in this new look SEC. How about Hawaii and UCLA? The Rainbow Warriors last week, not overly impressive in that win against a bad FCS team at that. Didn't come close to covering that huge number. UCLA, I mean, Deshaun Foster's press conference at Big Ten Media Days was ugly, but Garbers is still there at the quarterback position. I don't know, Chris. I once we get north of 14, I think this probably would be a take of the points on Hawaii, but You missed the best of it since the bettors did take Hawaii so far.
I made it 14.
Okay.
So,
right on it.
I mean, who wouldn't run through a wall for that coach for UCLA? That really was one of the worst speeches I've ever heard.
It was bad.
But, it's Hawaii, and surprisingly, Hawaii is not the strongest home field. You would think that with the travel. But I don't know. Maybe the fact that they're just not that good.
Yeah, this game did get as low as 13, but it's come back up. I'm not surprised that there's some UCLA money showing.
Another night game on Saturday. Alabama begins the Kalen DeBoer era. Of course, Nick Saban retiring in the offseason. Jalen Milroe did stay, though. Great news for DeBoer to keep him. 31.5 against Western Kentucky, 59.5. This is like one of the least movers of the entire board here, which is ironic that Alabama's involved in it. It's only moved the half point on the spread about 5 days ago, but that was it, Chris. Made a good number.
My handicap came to 32. I just stuck with the market, so no opinion for me.
Vinny, just real quick, with of course no Nick Saban anymore. Just we saw Kalen DeBoer take Washington to a national championship game a year ago. Obviously, he's won everywhere he's been, all the way up from the NAIA level. The change, even though it again going from an all-time great to a guy who has succeeded at every level.
Difficult to do that, right? To follow a legend, but I give the guy credit for having the guts and the smarts, really, when it came to the money to do it. I mean, but there's a much bigger drop off from where he was at Washington to this situation. It's still Alabama. Let's face it.
The defending champs. Also in action Saturday night, they host Fresno State. That's, of course, Michigan, new era, with Sharon Moore taking over for Jim Harbaugh, who's, of course, now coaching the Los Angeles Chargers, not the San Diego Chargers, Jeff.
I still call them that.
They should be the San Diego Chargers still. Totally new roster, as we know. Will Johnson on the defensive end, still there, arguably the best secondary player in college football, but a whole new offense in year one for Sharon Moore. Fresno State also had a little turnover because Jeff Tedford had to step away in the middle of the summer because of health issues, Chris.
I didn't mark this as one of my plays, but I have a lean towards Fresno State. I have a lot of respect for this program all the way back to Coach Hill. Even before that, Sweeney. What was it? Jim Sweeney, I think was his name. That's a lot of tough kids come from that Central California area. They recruit well right through there. Yeah, there's a lot of tough kids coming out of there. And I think they go into Michigan, and I think they make a good representation of themselves. Like I said, I did not put them as one of my plays, but I kind of like them with the points here.
21 and a half, 3 touchdowns. I mean, Jeff, maybe to your point, is it something you look at for the first half? This is a pretty intimidating location, though, to walk into, right? Let's face it. But to Chris's point, the well-coached program at Fresno.
Alec Orgy expected to get the bulk of the snaps for Michigan at quarterback. That's been a question all offseason. They technically returned no starters from a year ago. I know Donovan Edwards is still there. He technically didn't start behind Corum, even though he had the huge impact throughout the college football playoff. So, Michigan's one of the more fascinating teams this year because you have 3 games they're going to be an underdog in: Michigan, Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State. Will a 9-3 Michigan team be able to make the college football playoff? Maybe.
We'll see who else is 9-3.
We'll see who else exactly. We'll see who else is 9-3 and 10-2 at that point. The game that I had my eyes on all week, that's A&M hosting Notre Dame. Of course, Mike Elko takes over as the head coach of Texas A&M. And Chris, this to me has been the most fascinating bet game on the board for this. I thought your opening number, a pick, was right. Market disagreed. Took it as high as 3. You guys went back to 2.5 on this game just before the show began.
Yeah, I thought pick was a good number too. I do have them on my list as Notre Dame +3. You'd have to try to get that.
Still available.
It's around, and you might want to. You have to lay a little extra juice. Maybe you want to throw a little bit on the money line on Notre Dame just to even that out a little bit. But I like Notre Dame in this game. I thought Pick'em was the right number. And I think you look at Mike Elko, who's been a terrific coach, no doubt about that. But again, game 1, I think if we look at A&M by the end of the year, I think A&M has a chance of being one of those final 12 teams. So does Notre Dame, by the way. And again, we'll see who else is 10-2 and 9-3. But I think this could be a precursor to the playoffs. But again, Jeff, you know what I like, and we kind of talked about this earlier a little bit, at least Vinny and I did. In the past, if you lost this game, you might have been out of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Now you lost this game, okay, it means you're 0-1. It's kind of like, either Baltimore or Kansas City is going to be 0-1 on Sunday or next Sunday, and they're not out of anything. And it's kind of the same in college now. And I think I hope we see a lot more games like this, because I think athletic directors and coaches kind of shied away from some of these in the past.
Yep.
But this is, to me, what college football is about. I talked about West Virginia having such a great home field and such a culture. Well, A&M certainly fits that as well. And of course, so does Notre Dame. So you're seeing two great schools come in and playing each other. And, I think this is what's been lacking a lot in college football in the last couple of years. And I hope we see a revitalization of that.
I hope that I agree with Chris. I mean, I hope that the expanded playoff gives us more of these games, especially early in the season. 3's an absolute take with Notre Dame, and 100%. I think that's what we'll see it probably toggle back and forth here. So but again, hey, A&M, the new era, right? I mean, it's a matter of, is he going to connect better? Jimbo Fisher just didn't connect. I mean,
no, not one bit.
His recruiting, everything he did, it just didn't work out there. Meanwhile, God bless him.
He's enough money for a few like
He's doing real good right now.
So not that hard to find.
One other quick note on this game, of course, Riley Leonard played for Mike Elko at Duke. Riley Leonard now the quarterback for Notre Dame.
Right.
Not sure who that favors right out of the gate. Connor Wegman, of course, still there at A&M as the quarterback. It'll be a fun game to wrap up the Saturday night. We do have one game I want to at least get to here in town on Sunday. And that's LSU as a 4.5-point favorite against USC with a total of 64.5, Chris.
Oh, this should be a great game.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this. Another one of these great matchups where in the past you might have been behind the 8 ball if you lose this one early, but here they are playing right down the street here from us. And I got some affection for both schools. USC did my bone marrow transplant, and I have some good friends who have some attachments to LSU. So I have no feeling in that regard. My first numbers came a little bit higher on LSU. 6.5 was my original number. But the more I look at it, I think we may be overlooking USC a little bit. They may be a little better. And I know it was very easy to knock them last year. They lost some games they shouldn't have. Of course, they lose the Heisman Trophy winner, the #1 draft choice in the NFL. But we may be underestimating just how good that program has been for a long, long time. And I think this is going to be a really good game. Oh, by the way, Michael Gaughan was in our office. 75% of the tickets have been sold to people from Louisiana.
That makes sense.
So this is almost a home game. You'd think Southern California is, a couple hours away, but everybody came here from. And matter of fact, the guy I was waving to before had an LSU hat on. So
Which team's defense has improved, or has either team's defense improved?
You would hope the answer is both on that.
Because let's face it, this total has gone up a couple of points off the opener, now 64.5. So initial money came in on LSU, right? I think, Chrissy, the first bet was from 6 to 6.5, but it's been a pretty steady flow of SC money. Not a real surprise. I was a little surprised to hear how many folks were coming here from LSU. But you know what? It's a holiday weekend.
Exactly.
And anything here in town, look, it's an event. This is a type of an event. We talk about UFC cards and boxing cards being events. Well, anymore when there's a major matchup at either T-Mobile or Allegiant, then you know what, this fits the bill. And again, Michael Gaughan made a good point. This could set a new attendance record there.
Wouldn't shock me one bit.
Good game, great game.
Of course, both of these teams replacing Heisman-winning quarterbacks.
Right, exactly.
Caleb Williams, of course, a Chicago Bear. Yeah. Miller Moss wins the job over Maeva for USC. Jaden Daniels, now a Washington Commander.
Who was the number 2 draft?
Was the number 2 pick. Garrett Nussmeier, now your starting quarterback at LSU. So a lot of unknown, even though both of these guys in the limited action we saw, Miller Moss was awesome in the Holiday Bowl. Nussmeier was good when he was pressed into action last year. We'll see. A lot of unknown on that. The last game on the board, Chris, Vinny, Florida State, Boston College. Of course, the Noles lose in Dublin. This opened 22.5. Have to be a little bit readjusted after that result last week. Down to 16.5 now in Florida State hosting Boston College on Labor Day.
Well,
Vinny.
I know this game, after the adjustment to 17, has come, came down about 15.5. It's going to go back up. Florida State can't afford to be just out of the playoff picture right away and lose another conference game. Yeah. So I think there's going to be support for Florida State in this game, and I think we're going to see a much better effort in this one against BC.
You would hope. And if not, it could be a very long year in Tallahassee if that's the case.
If they're 0-2 in conference, they're pretty much out.
Well, then that's that.
That's
for sure.
That's the death knell.
Yeah,
but
100%.
My only wish, this is Labor Day night.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we had a little better game
than this one. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, you know what Labor Day weekend is in Reno? It's the rib cook-off.
Is it?
Anybody know? I mean, that was my favorite event for all those years in Reno, and I miss that. Let me tell you.
Can we get anything shipped down here?
If you come to my house, I might make them that night, man.
That sounds really good, actually. Not gonna lie. Again, if you watched us on the Sports by the Book channel, thank you. This is where the show is going to be hosted through football season. One last question, Agent 87. I guess we'll have to figure it out together here, fellas. He asked, what is the best power rating to use for college football? I guess the better way to put that is, how do you come about your college football ratings, which I know is a grand undertaking, Chris?
Yeah, and I mean, I know Kenny White does it a whole different way. Billy Walters does it a whole different way. But for me, the way I do it, I try to get the best team in the country at 100. Well, sometimes they go over 100. Sometimes they don't reach 100. But that's the way I generally try to do it, and then kind of adjust from there. And, you got to constantly look at it. I hear some guys saying, you got to have confidence in your system. I take the exact opposite approach. You have to constantly question your system, because none of us do it perfectly. Even, look at Billy Walters' book. Yeah. He hits 58, 59, 60%. That's damn good, let me tell you. Yeah, that's damn good. And he's the best.
Yeah.
So you got to be constantly looking at your power ratings and your system and all your analyses, and make sure you're on the right track. And listen, I've been doing this. I came to Nevada in 79. I'm in my 6th decade of doing this stuff. You learn something new all the time. And by the way, it's changing all the time, too. Not only am I learning all the time, it's changing all the time. You have to keep learning.
You can't be stubborn. You've got to, be willing to say, you know what, I might have been wrong, and compare notes. Like Chris and I are constantly talking to each other about numbers all the time and teams and things like that. I think what he's asking, though, is there a reference one that you could use, if I'm understanding the question? Yeah. You know what, I'm not necessarily going to endorse. There's some follow. And I'm not saying just follow. Maybe you got some get your network. Who's really good at if it's college. And again, we've got to book all the college teams. Maybe you just zero in and start making your own, but start with one conference. I'm not sure where he's from, but follow a conference and break down that conference. Immerse yourself in that conference, and start with who you think is the best team. And build start with a foundation. Chrissy said it's 100. Does it have to be 100? Maybe in the conference you start at a 50 and work your way backwards.
Yeah, I think Alex and Kenny White started 0.
Yep.
I think Billy uses that same method too. Yeah. Obviously, nothing wrong with that. You're making power ratings. Alex is doing power ratings. I would say try to educate yourself as much as possible. And really, Sports by the Book. My friend Vinny's on fairly often. They can give you a lot of little tips on certain games. The Bear, Felica, and and Schwartz.
Good opinions.
Jeff Schwartz. They have a lot of really good opinions. I'm not sure what ESPN is doing this year with Stanford Steve, but he has a very good opinion too. Try to listen to all those, as many as you can, and maybe try to formulate some things. And we have Ed Feng coming on next
Wednesday,
week on your show
on Wednesday.
And I know Ed well for a couple years, and Ed Feng is a very smart guy. I've been on a couple of his podcasts, and I always say, Ed, I have a math program. I'm not nearly arrogant enough to say it's a math model. He's a Stanford grad and a math major. He would laugh but I have a record-keeping system that I use. And I would tell you to do the same thing. And, it's something, I've been doing this for, 40-some years, and it's still far from perfect. Let me tell you, buddy, it's far from perfect, but I try to keep up with it and do the best that I can.
It's difficult to do.
It is.
But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
To try to beat you guys behind the counter.
Yeah.
At least for us bettors here, our simpleton bettors here, Chris.
Listen, and the guys again ask like me and Vinny, why do you do these shows? We want to expand the market.
Oh yeah,
we want to expand the market.
Share information.
Expanding market is good for all of us.
Yeah.
By the way, before we get out of here, just a reminder, Chris every week
I have 5 games.
is 5 games that he likes the most. Chris, you can run on through them.
Oklahoma.
Yes.
-42.
Woohoo!
Somewhere my Uncle Jack is rolling over. He might play. No, don't
I think
worry.
I just heard him say, what?
I like James Madison. What's the number right now? I know it went down as high as.
right?
We got to give out the current numbers.
Yeah, I just want to double
8.5.
I see 8.5 right now.
Yeah,
yes.
okay, so let's say 8.5. UNLV +3.
Yep.
Virginia Tech 13.5 is the market number.
Yep.
And Notre Dame, you got to take the 3. And there's 3s out there.
There's more than enough 3s.
Yeah, there's more than enough 3. So those are the 5 games. So 1, 2, 3 dogs. Oh, I'm sorry. 2 dogs, 3 favorites. So, that's who I like this week.
You'll have to find out the rest of my plays tomorrow morning. You have to watch on Sports by the Book at 8 a.m.
There's a tease.
There's a tease.
There's a tease.
Myself, Alex White, will be with you at 8 a.m. tomorrow. We'll break down as many games as we can in an hour. We'll also see Vinny again as well.
You'll see Vinny.
Give us the report.
Yep. Come here early because we got a couple of great 9 o'clock games. And again, Mr. Growney, like he says, you need a shoehorn to fit anybody else in this
100%. Chris, Vinny, I'm so happy
guys.
to have this show back. I look forward to it every Friday. Looked forward to it every Friday last year.
Yeah.
Happy to be doing it again, starting at 2 o'clock Pacific time every Friday for Football Frenzy here on Sports by the Book. Sports by the Book with myself and Alex White tomorrow at 8 a.m. We'll see you again then here at the South Point.